Welcome to the family. If you enjoy powerful stories and wild adventures, subscribe now, hit like and share with someone who will love it too. The cargo hauler Meridian drifted silently through the Vega Nebula's outer rim, its hull scarred by countless journeys through hostile space. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's chair, fingers drumming against the worn armrest as he monitored the sensor readings. 3 months of deep space hauling had left him restless, eager to reach Port Havana and collect his payment. "Contact on long-range sensors," announced his co-pilot Maria Santos, her voice cutting through the ship's ambient hum. 2 vessels, running dark, but not dark enough. Jake leaned forward, studying the tactical display. The signatures were unmistakable. Cytherian, interceptors, sleek predators designed for one purpose: piracy. His jaw tightened. The Cytherians had been growing bolder lately, their raids extending deeper into human shipping lanes. "How long until they reach intercept range?" he asked. 15 minutes, maybe less. Maria's hands flew across her console, running diagnostics on their meager defensive systems. "Jake, we're carrying 40 tons of refined trilithium. If they scan our cargo, they'll take it all," Jake finished grimly. Trilithium was worth more than most planets' annual budgets, and the Cytherians knew it. He activated the ship's internal. "Calm. All hands, this is the captain. We've got company incoming. Secure yourselves for evasive maneuvers." The Meridian wasn't built for speed or combat. She was a workhorse designed to carry massive loads across the galaxy's shipping routes. But Jake had spent 15 years piloting everything from military corvettes to asteroid miners. He knew every trick in the book. Maria, kill all non-essential systems. Route everything to the engines. The ship's lights dimmed as power flowed to the massive drive cores, and send a distress signal on the emergency frequency. Already done. But we're 3 days from the nearest patrol route. Jake nodded grimly. They were on their own. The interceptors closed the distance with predatory efficiency. Through the viewport, Jake could see their distinctive blue-green hulls adorned with the curved symbols of the Cytherian hegemony. Each ship was twice the size of the Meridian, bristling with weapons that could reduce his cargo hauler to scrap in seconds. "This is War Leader Vex of the hegemony vessel Shadowclaw," came the transmission, the universal translator rendering the alien's hissing voice into cold mechanical English. "Human vessel, you will cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Jake exchanged a look with Maria. In the cargo bay below, he knew their 3-person crew was probably checking their sidearms. That small arms would do much good against Cytherian battle armor. "War Leader Vex," Jake replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. "This is Captain Morrison of the merchant vessel Meridian. We're carrying medical supplies to the Tau Ceti colonies. Surely the hegemony doesn't make war on doctors and children." A harsh laugh crackled through the comm. "Your cargo manifests are lies, human. Our sensors detect trilithium in your hold. You will surrender now, or we will take it from your corpse." The Meridian shuddered as the Cytherian ship's tractor beams locked onto her hull. Jake felt the ship's engines strain against the alien technology, but it was useless. Within minutes, they were being drawn inexorably toward the larger interceptor's docking bay. "What's the plan, Captain?" Maria whispered, her hand hovering over the emergency beacon that would wipe the ship's navigation data. Jake stared at the growing bulk of the Cytherian ship ahead of them. Somewhere in his mind, an old instructor's voice echoed, "When you're outgunned and outnumbered, use what they don't expect." "We're going aboard," he said quietly, "but not as prisoners." The Meridian's hull rang like a bell as the Cytherian ship's docking clamps secured their grip. Jake could hear the mechanical whine of airlocks cycling, the hiss of pressure equalization. He glanced at his chronometer. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the boarding party arrived. "Tony, get up here," Jake called into the comm. Chief Engineer Tony Riggs appeared moments later, his coveralls stained with engine grease, tool belt jangling with improvised modifications he'd made to keep their aging ship running. "Captain, I've been thinking," Tony said, wiping his hands on a rag. "The Cytherians use maglock systems for their boarding tubes. If I can jury-rig a feedback pulse through our hull—" "No time," Jake interrupted. "How's our little insurance policy?" Tony's weathered face split into a grin. "Locked and loaded, Captain, though I still think you're completely insane." The 4th member of their crew, Dr. Lisa Park, emerged from the medical bay, carrying what appeared to be a standard emergency kit. Her expression was calm, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. As the ship's medic and backup systems specialist, she'd drawn the most dangerous assignment. "Remember," Jake said, addressing all three of them, "Cytherians are fast. But they're overconfident. They've been raiding human ships for 2 years without serious resistance. They won't expect—" The ship's hull reverberated with the sound of cutting tools. Sparks began to shower from the main airlock as the boarding party burned through the outer seal. "Positions," Jake ordered. Maria took her place at the communications console, her fingers hovering over a series of carefully prepared commands. Tony disappeared back into the engineering section, while Dr. Park positioned herself near the medical station, her emergency kit within easy reach. Jake drew his sidearm, a standard-issue plasma pistol that would barely scratch Cytherian armor, and took position beside the airlock. The metal groaned as the outer door gave way. The first Cytherian through the breach stood nearly 8 feet tall, its insectoid form encased in gleaming battle armor that pulsed with energy fields. Compound eyes swept the bridge, while twin arms ended in weapons that looked capable of punching through starship hulls. 2 more warriors followed, their movements fluid and predatory. "Humans," the lead Cytherian spoke, its voice a mixture of clicks and hisses that the translator rendered as cold disdain. "You will surrender your weapons and prepare to be questioned about your cargo." Jake slowly placed his pistol on the deck, hands raised. "Easy there, friend. We're just merchants. No need for violence." The Cytherian's head tilted, studying him with those multifaceted eyes. "Your species amuses me, human. You speak of peace, while your military burns our colonies." "I'm not military," Jake replied, "just trying to make a living." "Indeed." The warrior gestured to its companions, who began spreading out across the bridge. "I am Battlemaster Kess. Your ship's cargo belongs to the hegemony now, as do your lives. You may serve as useful examples." Maria's hands moved across her console with practiced efficiency, but she was careful to keep her movements subtle. To the Cytherians, it would appear she was simply shutting down ship systems as ordered. "Examples of what?" Jake asked, keeping the alien's attention focused on him. "That human expansion ends here," Kess replied. "Your kind has grown too bold, too numerous. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to take it." One of the other Cytherians had moved to the engineering console, its armored fingers dancing across the alien interface as it attempted to access the ship's systems. Jake suppressed a smile. Tony had spent weeks preparing for this moment. "To note," Jake said conversationally, "humans have a saying about counting chickens before they hatch." Kess's head snapped around, compound eyes focusing on him with sudden intensity. "Explain this reference." "It means maybe you should make sure you've actually won before you start celebrating." The Cytherian at the engineering station suddenly stepped back, a series of rapid clicks emerging from its translator. "Battlemaster, the ship's systems are heavily encrypted, and there are power fluctuations throughout the hull." Kess turned toward Jake, weapons beginning to glow with lethal energy. "What have you done, human?" Jake's grin widened. "Me? Nothing. But you might want to ask your friends about the gift they just carried aboard their ship." The Shadow Claws. Command center erupted in chaos as warning klaxons began wailing throughout the massive interceptor. War Leader Vex stood at the central tactical display, her forearms moving rapidly across holographic controls as damage reports flooded in from across the ship. "Report!" she hissed, her translator rendering the command with mechanical precision. "Massive. System failures throughout sections 7 through 12, responded her tactical officer. "Life support, artificial gravity, and weapon systems are all experiencing cascading shutdowns." "The human ship," Vex snarled, her compound eyes reflecting the red warning lights. "What did they do?" Meanwhile, aboard the Meridian, Battlemaster. Kess held her weapon directly at Jake's head, the energy field crackling with barely contained destruction. "Speak quickly, human, or you die where you stand." Jake kept his hands raised, but his expression remained maddeningly calm. "Oh, that's not really my department. Dr. Park, would you like to explain?" Lisa Park stepped forward, no longer playing the role of frightened medic. Her movement was confident, precise, the bearing of someone with extensive military training. In her hands, the medical kit had transformed into something far more sophisticated. Nanovirus deployment system, she said matter-of-factly, designed specifically for Cytherian technology. Your people's reliance on biomechanical integration makes you surprisingly vulnerable to the right kind of infection. Kess's weapon swiveled toward Dr. Park, but the human woman continued speaking as if she were discussing the weather. The beauty of it is the delivery method. Your boarding protocols require atmospheric exchange between ships. Every breath your people took once you breached our hull carried millions of synthetic organisms designed to interface with Cytherian neural networks. Impossible, Kess spat. Human technology is primitive. You lack the sophistication for such weapons. That's what we wanted you to think, Jake interjected. Amazing what you can accomplish when your enemy underestimates you. The truth was more complex than either alien realized. Dr. Park wasn't just a ship's medic. She was a former special operations biotechnician who'd spent 3 years developing countermeasures against Cytherian raids. The nanovirus was her masterpiece, a weapon that existed in complete violation of several interstellar treaties. The organism is already spreading through your ship's systems, Park continued, checking a small handheld device. Your biomechanical interfaces are being systematically compromised. Within 20 minutes, your entire vessel will be dead in space. On cue, the lights throughout the meridian flickered as the Cytherian ship's power grid experienced another massive failure. Through the viewport, they could see sections of the Shadowclaw going dark. You're bluffing, Kess said, but uncertainty crept into her translated voice. Tony's voice crackled through the comm system. Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from both Cytherian vessels. Whatever Doc Park did, it's working like a charm. The second Cytherian interceptor, Void Cutter, was experiencing similar problems. Its captain, Huntmaster Rex, watched in growing horror as his ship's systems failed one by one. The nanovirus had spread through the shared communication channels, infecting both vessels simultaneously. This is impossible, Rex hissed to his crew. Human weapons cannot affect our ships. But the evidence was undeniable. Weapon systems went offline, followed by navigation, then life support. The proud vessels of the Cytherian hegemony, feared throughout this sector of space, were being brought low by an enemy they dismissed as inferior. Aboard the Meridian, Kess made a desperate decision. If her ship was dying, she would at least complete her mission and eliminate these troublesome humans. Her weapon powered up to maximum charge. You may have destroyed my vessel, she said, but you will not live to... Safety's on, Jake said quietly. Kess paused, confused by the non-sequitur. What? Your weapon, the safety's engaged, Jake's grin returned. Dr. Park's virus doesn't just affect ship systems, it targets all Cytherian biomechanical interfaces, including personal equipment. The Battlemaster looked down at her weapon, in growing alarm. The energy field that should have been building to lethal levels was flickering weakly. She tried to disengage the safety mechanism, but her armor's targeting systems were no longer responding to her neural commands. Around the bridge, the other 2 Cytherian warriors were experiencing similar failures. Their weapons powered down, their armor's enhanced strength systems went offline, and their internal communication networks fell silent. Now, Jake said, his voice hardening, let's discuss new terms for this encounter. The situation aboard both Cytherian vessels deteriorated rapidly as the nanovirus spread through their interconnected systems. War Leader Vex found herself trapped on a bridge where half the consoles had gone dark, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across her crew's increasingly panicked faces. Damage control teams report total system failure in the lower decks, her communications officer announced, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. The organism is adapting faster than our countermeasures can respond. Vex slammed one of her 4 fists against her command chair. For 3 years, she had terrorized human shipping lanes, building a reputation that made merchant captains surrender at the first sight of her ships. Now a single cargo hauler had reduced her proud fleet to floating scrap. Open a channel to the human vessel, she ordered. Meanwhile, aboard the Meridian, Jake watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Both Cytherian ships were dead. In space, their weapon systems offline, their engines cold. But he knew this was only the beginning of a much larger game. "Incoming transmission from the Shadow Claw," Maria announced. "Put it through." Warleader Vex's image appeared on the main screen, her compound eyes reflecting a mixture of rage and grudging respect. "Human Captain Morrison, it appears you have surprised us." "That was the idea," Jake replied. "Though I have to say, you folks made it easier than expected. What kind of military force doesn't scan for biological weapons before conducting a boarding operation?" "We had no reason to suspect such capabilities from your species," Vex admitted. "Our intelligence suggested human technology was decades behind ours." Dr. Park stepped into view of the camera. "Intelligence can be misleading, especially when it's deliberately planted." The revelation hit the Catherian leader like a physical blow. "You mean every raid you've conducted, every easy victory against human merchants, every piece of technology you've captured and analyzed, it was all carefully orchestrated," Jake explained. "We've been feeding you exactly what we wanted you to know about human capabilities." The truth was even more complex than the Catherians realized. The merchant vessel Meridian was actually a deep-cover military asset, part of a joint operation between human colonial defense and Earth intelligence. For 18 months, Jake's crew had been laying the groundwork for this moment. The raids, the captured cargo, the interrogated prisoners, all of it designed to make you overconfident, Tony's voice added from the comm system. "We needed you to think you understood us." Huntmaster Rex's image joined the transmission from the Void Cutter, his insectoid features twisted with fury. "Deception! Treachery! This is not how honorable warriors conduct themselves." "Honor." Jake's expression hardened. "You want to talk about honor after 3 years of murdering unarmed civilians? After attacking medical transports and colony supply ships? Those were legitimate military targets," Rex protested. "Those were families," Maria interjected, her voice cold as space. "Including mine." The bridge fell silent as the weight of her words settled over the group. Maria Santos wasn't just a co-pilot. She was a survivor of the Catherian attack on New Barcelona, one of the raids that had killed over 10,000 colonists. "This nanovirus of yours," Vex said finally, "what are your terms for providing the antidote?" Dr. Park shook her head. "There is no antidote. The organism is designed to be permanent. Your ships will never function again." "Then you have murdered us as surely as if you had fired weapons." Kess spoke from behind Jake, her armor now completely powerless. "Not necessarily," Jake said. "Your ships are dead, but your life support systems are running on independent backup power. You have perhaps 6 hours of breathable atmosphere remaining." "6 hours to do what?" Rex demanded. "To make a choice." Jake turned to face the camera directly. "You can die here, proud and defiant, maintaining your warrior code until the end. Or you can live and carry a message back to the hegemony." Vex's compound eyes narrowed. "What message?" "That humanity is no longer the easy prey you thought we were. That every merchant ship you've attacked, every colony you've raided, every human life you've taken, it was all part of a larger plan. And that plan is about to enter its next phase." The tactical display updated as new contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. The signatures were unmistakable, human military vessels moving in perfect formation toward their position. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a carrier group, Maria announced. ETA 15 minutes. "You see," Jake continued, "while you were busy learning about our supposedly primitive technology, we were learning about yours. Your ship designs, your tactics, your strategic thinking, all of it observed and catalogued during every engagement." "The Kai. Question now," Dr. Park added, "is whether you want to be prisoners of war or messengers, because one way or another the Catherian raids on human space are about to end." The rescue pods launched from both Catherian vessels just minutes before. The human fleet arrived. Warleader Vex watched through the small viewport as her proud ship Shadowclaw grew smaller in the distance, now nothing more than a tomb of dead metal and failing systems. Beside her, in the cramped pod, Battlemaster Kess struggled with restraints, designed for human physiology. A final humiliation that the escape pods were themselves captured Cytherian technology, now repurposed by their former victims. "Receiving you clearly, Pod 1, came Captain Morrison's voice through the communication system. "Maintain course for rendezvous with HCS Valiant. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile action." Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Valiant, studying the tactical display, with the satisfaction of a chess player who had just achieved checkmate. Around her, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating the capture of the disabled Cytherian vessels. "Boarding teams report both ships are secure," announced her tactical officer. "The bioweapon worked exactly as Dr. Park predicted. Every system is permanently offline." "Excellent." Chen activated her personal comm. "Morrison, well done. How are our guests?" Jake's image appeared on the screen, and Chen could see the exhaustion in his eyes. 18 months of deep cover operations had taken their toll, but the mission was finally complete. "Cooperative for the most part," Jake replied, "though I think the reality of their situation is still sinking in." "And the nanovirus?" "Completely contained to Cytherian biomechanical systems. Dr. Park's design specifications were flawless. It can't affect human technology or biology." Chen nodded approvingly. The development of the nanovirus had been the most controversial aspect of Operation Mousetrap. Several ethics committees had raised objections to creating what was essentially a plague designed to target specific alien technology. But after 3 years of Cytherian atrocities, moral qualms had given way to military necessity. "Transfer the prisoners to the Valiant," Chen ordered. "We'll escort them to the border and send them home with their message." Within hours, Vex and her surviving crew found themselves in the cruiser's detention facility, not the cramped, brutal cells they might have expected, but clean, well-lit quarters with adequate food and medical care. It was, Vex realized, treatment far better than her own people had ever shown to human prisoners. Dr. Park visited each of the detained Cytherians, providing medical examinations and ensuring their health during transport. When she reached Vex's cell, the former war leader looked up with something approaching curiosity. "You could have simply killed us," Vex observed. "Why this elaborate charade?" "Because dead martyrs inspire more raiders," Park replied, checking her medical scanner. "Living witnesses who can testify to human capabilities serve our purposes better. Your nanovirus. How long have your people possessed such weapons?" Park paused in her examination. "Longer than you might think. The Colonial Defense Force began developing biological countermeasures after the first Cytherian attacks. We've had functional prototypes for over 2 years." 2 years? Vex's compound eyes widened. "Then why did you not use them sooner?" "Because we needed you to get comfortable first. Confident. Predictable." Park sealed her medical kit and prepared to leave. "Every raid you conducted was monitored, analyzed, and incorporated into our tactical database. You taught us how to fight you by fighting us." The journey to the Cytherian border took 3 days. During that time, Vex found herself in an unexpected position, that of student rather than conqueror. The human crew treated their prisoners with professional respect, providing access to recreational materials, allowing them to observe daily operations, even engaging in carefully supervised conversations. It was during one such conversation that Vex began to understand the true scope of what had transpired. "Your merchant fleet," she said to Admiral Chen during a formal interview session. "How?" "Many vessels were actually military assets in disguise. About 40% of the ships you encountered," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Though the cargo they carried was genuine, we couldn't risk raising suspicions with fake merchandise." 40%, Vex repeated slowly. "And the captured human prisoners you interrogated?" "Volunteers, mostly. Colonial defense personnel who underwent extensive training to provide convincing but misleading information under interrogation. The magnitude of the deception was staggering. For 3 years, the Cytherian hegemony had believed itself to be winning a one-sided conflict against a technologically inferior species. In reality, they had been unwitting participants in the largest intelligence-gathering operation in human history. "There is something I must know," Vex said finally. "This level of coordination, this patience, it suggests your species possesses strategic thinking capabilities we did not expect." How long have you been planning this? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering her response. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Since the day your people made the mistake of underestimating us. Humans don't forget, war leader, and we never forgive attacks on our families. The Cytherian border station Nexus Prime materialized on the view screen as the human convoy approached the edge of hegemony space. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching as the massive alien construct, part fortress, part starport, part symbol of military might, grew larger with each passing moment. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Open." The channel. The screen flickered, revealing a Cytherian officer whose ornate armor marked him as high-ranking military. His compound eyes studied the human fleet with obvious suspicion and barely concealed hostility. "Human vessels, you will halt and explain your presence in hegemony space," the alien commander declared. "I am Border Admiral Thex of the 3rd Defense." "Fleet, Admiral Thex," Chen replied with formal courtesy. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We are returning prisoners of war under the terms of the Galactic Conventions." "What prisoners?" "We have received no reports of captured personnel." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "The crew of the Shadow Claw and Void Cutter, including War Leader Vex and Huntmaster Rex, I believe you'll find their testimony illuminating and fey." Hour later, Vex stood in the debriefing chamber aboard Nexus Prime, facing a tribunal of the hegemony's highest-ranking military commanders. The chamber itself was an impressive display of Cytherian architecture. Soaring crystalline walls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, gravity fields that allowed participants to position themselves at any angle, and acoustic dampeners that ensured perfect communication despite the room's vast size. High Commander Quinn, supreme leader of the Cytherian military forces, dominated the center of the chamber. His massive form, nearly 10 feet tall and encased in ceremonial armor that had been worn in a dozen major conflicts, radiated authority and barely contained fury. "Explain to me, War Leader Vex, how an entire raiding fleet was captured by a single human cargo vessel." Quinn's voice resonated through the chamber like controlled thunder. Vex had spent the 3-day journey preparing for this moment, organizing her thoughts and trying to comprehend the full implications of what she had witnessed. Now facing the assembled might of Hegemony Command, she chose her words carefully. "The humans deceived us, High Commander. For 3 years they allowed us to believe we were winning a war of raids and conquest. In reality, they were conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in recorded history." "Impossible," interjected War Prime Crix, one of Quinn's senior advisors. "Human technology is generations behind ours. Their military doctrine is primitive, their strategic thinking crude." "That is what they wanted us to believe," Vex replied. "Every piece of intelligence we gathered, every technological sample we captured, every prisoner we interrogated, it was all carefully orchestrated to give us false confidence." She activated a holographic display, showing tactical data from her encounters over the past year. "Review the patterns, War Prime. Every successful raid, every easy victory, every demonstration of human weakness, they follow a precise schedule, designed to keep us engaged, but not suspicious." High Commander Quinn studied the display with growing unease. The tactical patterns were indeed too perfect, too convenient. What had appeared to be random opportunities for easy victories now revealed themselves as carefully baited traps. "The nanovirus they used," Quinn said finally. "Describe its capabilities." "Complete shutdown of biomechanical systems," Vex reported. "Permanent and irreversible. It targets the specific neural interfaces our technology relies on, making our ships nothing more than dead hulks. And they claim to have had this weapon for 2 years? Longer, possibly. High Commander, I believe they could have ended our raids at any time. They chose not to because our attack served their purposes." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled commanders. The Cytherian hegemony prided itself on military superiority, technological advancement, and strategic thinking that had conquered dozens of star systems. To learn that they had been outmaneuvered by a species they considered inferior was a blow to their fundamental worldview. "There is more," Vex continued. During transport, I observed their crew coordination, their equipment maintenance, their tactical discussions. These humans are not the divided, chaotic species our intelligence suggested. They display military discipline that rivals or exceeds our own. "What are you saying?" Crix demanded. "I am saying we have been fighting the wrong." What, Prime? While we conducted raids against what we believed were soft civilian targets, they were studying us, learning our weaknesses, and preparing for a conflict we cannot win. High Commander Quinn rose to his full imposing height, his armors bioluminescent, patterns shifting to deep red, a sign of extreme agitation in Kytherian culture. "You suggest we should fear these mammals," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I suggest, High Commander, that we should respect them, and more importantly, we should understand that they are now coming for us." As if summoned by her words, an aide rushed into the chamber carrying an emergency communication device. "High Commander, priority alert from Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Quinn activated the device, and a panicked voice filled the chamber. "This is Station 7. We're detecting massive human fleet movements along the entire border. Hundreds of ships, High Commander. They're not raiding. They're positioning for full-scale invasion." The chamber erupted in chaos as commanders shouted orders and demands for information. But Vex remained calm, watching as the reality of humanity's true intentions became clear to her people. The raids had ended. The real war was about to begin. 6 months after war leader Vex's return to hegemony space, the first shots of the human Kytherian war were fired at the contested system of Kepler 442. Unlike the previous years of hit-and-run raids, this was a full-scale military engagement between two determined civilizations. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the HCS Prometheus, humanity's newest and most advanced dreadnought, watching as her fleet moved into position around the strategic world of Kytheria Prime, the hegemony's military headquarters, and the symbol of their power throughout this sector of the galaxy. "All task forces report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Morrison, now serving as Chen's chief of staff. After his successful completion of Operation Mousetrap, the past months had seen him and his crew receive numerous commendations, though Jake knew the real test of their work was about to begin. "Dr. Park, status on the bio-warfare countermeasures?" Lisa Park looked up from her tactical console, where streams of data showed the deployment of her nanovirus across 17 different star systems. "All Kytherian military installations in the target zones are showing complete system failures. Their fleet effectiveness has been reduced by approximately 60%. And their response? Exactly as predicted. They're consolidating their remaining functional ships into a single massive fleet, positioning for a decisive battle here at Kytheria Prime." Through the viewscreen, the planet dominated the vista, a world of crystalline cities and orbital defense platforms that had never known defeat. Today, that would change. High Commander Quinn stood in the war room deep beneath Kytheria Prime's capital city, surrounded by the remnants of his once mighty fleet commanders. The past months had been a disaster of unprecedented proportions. System after system had fallen to human advance forces, not through superior firepower, but through the insidious nanovirus that turned their own technology against them. "Status report," he demanded. "We have managed to shield approximately 40% of our remaining fleet from the human bioweapon," reported War Prime Crix. "The rest are gone. Dead ships floating in space." "And our ground forces?" "Fully operational. The virus appears to affect only biomechanical interfaces, not our personal armor or weapons systems." Quinn nodded grimly. "If the humans wanted Kytheria Prime, they would have to take it in ground combat, something no enemy had ever successfully accomplished. Deploy all available forces. If we cannot win in space, we will make them pay dearly for every inch of our homeworld." Above the planet's atmosphere, the human fleet took position with mechanical precision. Chen had spent months studying Kytherian military doctrine, learning from the intelligence gathered during the merchant raids of the previous years. She knew exactly how her enemy would respond. "All ships, commence bombardment of orbital defense platforms," she ordered. The space around Kytheria Prime erupted in brilliant flashes of energy as human weapon systems engaged the planet's defensive. installations. But this was not the indiscriminate destruction that the Cytherians had visited on human colonies. Each target was carefully selected to minimize civilian casualties while eliminating military threats. Boarding shuttles launching from Bay 7, reported the tactical officer. Ground assault teams are ready for deployment. Among those assault teams was a familiar figure. Tony Riggs, the former chief engineer of the Meridian, now wore the combat armor of a colonial Marines technical specialist. His mission was crucial: penetrate the planet's central command facility and deliver one final surprise to the Cytherian leadership. The battle for Cytheria Prime raged for 3 days. Human forces, supported by their technological advantages and superior intelligence, gradually fought their way through the planet's defensive networks. But the Cytherians, fighting for their homeworld, extracted a heavy price for every victory. It was on the 3rd day that Tony's team finally reached the underground command center where High Commander Quinn had made his final stand. The Cytherian leader, his ceremonial armor scarred by battle, stood surrounded by his last loyal warriors as human troops poured into the chamber. "Human!" Quinn's voice boomed across the chamber. "You have won through treachery and deception, but know this: the hegemony will never surrender." Tony stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a face that Quinn recognized from intelligence briefings. "Chief Engineer Riggs of the merchant vessel Meridian, and you're wrong about one thing, High Commander." "What?" "We didn't win through treachery. We won because you underestimated us." Tony activated a small device he'd been carrying. "Dr. Park wanted me to give you this." The device projected a holographic message. Lisa Park's image appeared in the center of the chamber, addressing the assembled Cytherian leaders directly. "High Commander Quinn, by now you understand that your military forces have been neutralized, but I want you to know that the nanovirus was only the beginning. Every piece of Cytherian technology you've developed, every tactical doctrine you've employed, every strategic advantage you thought you possessed, we've been studying it all for 3 years." The hologram continued. "Your raids taught us everything we needed to know about your weaknesses. Your overconfidence gave us the time we needed to prepare. And your mistake was believing that humans would always be victims." High Commander Quinn's compound eyes reflected the holographic light as Park's message reached its conclusion. "The war is over, High Commander. Not because we destroyed you, but because we've made it impossible for you to threaten human space again. Your choice now is simple: peaceful coexistence or complete annihilation." The hologram flickered and died, leaving the chamber in heavy silence. Around Quinn, his remaining warriors lowered their weapons, not in surrender, but in recognition of an inescapable reality. "What are your terms?" Quinn asked finally, his voice stripped of its former arrogance. Tony consulted a data pad. "Immediate cessation of all military actions against human territories, complete withdrawal of Cytherian forces to pre-war boundaries, reparations for damages caused during 3 years of raids, and most importantly, formal recognition of humanity as an equal power in this sector. And if we refuse, then Dr. Park's next-generation nanovirus gets deployed against your civilian infrastructure. Your entire civilization goes dark within a week." Quinn studied the young human engineer, seeing in his calm certainty the same quality that had made the deception possible in the first place. Humans, he realized, possessed something the hegemony had never encountered before: the ability to plan decades ahead while maintaining perfect operational security. "The hegemony accepts your terms," Quinn said formally. 3 hours later, Admiral Chen received the official surrender aboard the Prometheus. As she watched Cytherian ships withdrawing from contested systems across the sector, she reflected on the true lesson of the conflict. "Jake," she said, addressing Captain Morrison as he joined her on the observation deck, "what do you think they'll tell their children about this war?" Jake considered the question, watching as the last Cytherian vessel disappeared into hyperspace. "They'll probably say they lost because humans cheated, used deception instead of honorable combat. And what will we tell ours? The truth, that when someone threatens our families, we don't just fight back. We make sure they can never threaten anyone again." Below them, Cytheria Prime began the long process of reconstruction under human oversight. The planet would recover, Its people would adapt, and eventually both species would learn to coexist in a galaxy large enough for all. But the lesson would endure. Humanity had proven that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. In the cargo bay that had started it all, Dr. Park sealed the last samples of her nanovirus in containment units, marked with biohazard warnings in 17 different languages. The weapon that had ended the Cytherian threat would be stored, studied, and hopefully never used again. But it would be ready if needed. Because as Jake Morrison had learned during those long months aboard the Meridian, the safety was off now, and humanity intended to keep it that way.